أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم وفقنا وسائر المشتغلين للعلم والعمل الصالح بحق محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن عدوهم. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, brevity may suffice in accomplishing eloquence. Brevity may suffice in accomplishing eloquence. قال الإمام علي عليه السلام قد يكتفى من البلاغة بالإيجاز. قد يكتفى من البلاغة بالإيجاز. With the transaction, we reach to issue number 2072. The fat obtained from a dead animal, the fat obtained from a dead animal, and the hide obtained from a Muslim, when one knows that the Muslim has obtained it from a non-Muslim without investigating whether or not the animal has been slaughtered according to Islamic law, is tahir. And its sale and purchase permissible. Its sale and purchase is permissible, but it is not permissible to eat it. The fat that we obtain or take it from dead animal, we are talking about their sale or purchase, not about consume them. We are talking about the transaction. Put this in your mind. We are talking about transaction, sale or purchase. Now this fat, which is obtained from a dead animal, or the hide we have taken from a Muslim, and this Muslim has taken it from a non-Muslim, and we did not make an investigating. There is no investigation about this animal which has taken the fat from or the hide from has been slaughtered according to the Islamic laws or not. In this case, it is halal. It is halal to sell or purchase this. I think it's permissible. It is correct idiom to say permissible, not halal or haram. It is permissible to sell or purchase this product. But how about to consume it? How about to eat that fat? No, to eat that fat is not permissible. Yes, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, my question is about who is it sell it and who is purchase that?
Who sell it or purchase it?
Yeah.
You are a Muslim.
So I'm Muslim. I'm purchase this fat. From who is it? From non-Muslim?
From either from a Muslim who obtained it from non-Muslim, or you purchase it from where? From a non-Muslim.
So, this case,
this transaction is permissible.
Okay.
This transaction is permissible, but to consume this fat is not permissible.
So, my duty is to investigate about that?
Yes, you have to.
My duty?
Yes, you have to check out. Even if you bought it from a non-Muslim, you ask him, did you slaughter this animal according to the laws of Islam, the prescribed laws of Islam of slaughtering, or not? If he said, yes, I hired some employee, they are Muslim, and they themselves do this, not I am.
So this is enough is if his answered me about that, or what the convince about this is straight?
It depends, Shaykhana, it depends. If you trust him and he is a reliable person, go ahead, you know that. If you do not trust him, you need to investigate more and more.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Issue number 73, sorry. Transaction of intoxicating drinks is haram and void. Transaction to sell or to purchase. To sell or to purchase. Any kind of transaction of these intoxicating drinks is haram. Number one is haram. And it is void. What does it mean haram? It is not allowed to purchase or sell it. What does it mean void? It means void that the money you gave instead of this intoxicating drinks, the seller, he cannot use them. It does not belong to him. They are still belong who? Belong the buyer. Belong the buyer. And also the intoxicating drink is still belong to the seller. Issue number 2074. Sale of usurped property is void. Sale of usurped property is void. You know what does it mean usurped? Alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Usurped, it means somebody has taken a property not belong to him by force or by cheating. Have you got this? Yes. Sale of usurped property is void and the seller should return to the buyer. Seller should return to the buyer the money taken from him. Again, sale of usurped property is void. What does that mean? This means the seller should return the buyer the money taken from him. And the usurped property should go back, or they should return it back to its owner. To its owner, not to the usurper. Because the usurper is not the owner. Issue number 2075. If a buyer is serious about a transaction, the buyer is serious about transaction, but his intention is not to pay the price of the commodity being purchased by him. He is serious to buy this commodity, this goods. He's serious about buying. هو جاد بالشراء هذه البضاعة. But in his intention not to give the money to the seller. Not to give the money to the seller. This intention will not affect the validity of the transaction. That means the transaction is what? Is valid. Though it is absolutely necessary that he should pay the money to the seller, but at the same time it is necessary to give the money to the seller. Even if his intention was not to give the seller the money, but the transaction is valid, not void, number one. Number two, he has to pay the money to whom? To the seller. Issue number 2076. If a person has purchased a commodity on credit, you know what does mean on credit? Yes. To pay not now, to pay money or the price later on. If a person has purchased a commodity on credit and wishes to pay its price later from his haram earning or wealth, from his haram earning or from his haram wealth, the transaction will be valid. The transaction will be valid. But he will have to pay the amount which he owes from the halal property, not from the haram property, in order to be absolved of his responsibility. In order to absolve his responsibility. In this case, this person, he bought a commodity from the seller, or he purchased a commodity from a seller on credit. And this buyer, in his intention, is to give the money to the seller from haram money or from haram wealth. Now, here we have two questions. Question number one, is this commodity or is this transaction void or invalid? The transaction, it is valid and it is correct. Number one. Number two, is it halal to pay him the money from haram, or it is right? No. He has to pay the money from the halal income, not from haram property. Yes, what's your question?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Haram will be only on the buyer whose intention is to pay from haram wealth?
Yeah, we are talking about the buyer,
the
not
buyer
about
himself.
The seller. We are talking about the buyer himself.
So the seller, there is nothing on the seller, whether he knows that the wealth is haram from the buyer or not haram.
Definitely, if the seller knows that the money he has instead of his commodity comes from haram property or from a usurped property, he shouldn't take it. And if he took it, he should give it back to its original owner, not to the usurper. وضحت الفكرة شيخنا؟
Yes.
إنه لما ياخذ ثمن البضاعة مالته ويدري بهذا الثمن حرام، عليه إنه يرجع، وإذا يعرف صاحبه يرجع الصاحب الرئيسي، يرجع لهذا الغاصب.
So in a case that we know that some people, their works have haram works, haram conditions, and later on they come and try to buy something from us.
Do they have halal income or 100% their income is haram?
In this case, it's mixed.
Mixed?
Yes.
So there is nothing, and you consider the money that he buys
From
this
halal.
commodity from halal side, from
thank you
halal
very
income.
much.
You're welcome. Issue number 2077. Purchase and sale of instruments of entertainment, tools and instruments of entertainment like guitar, lute and harmonium, etc. is haram. Purchase or sell such instrument. And as a precaution, the same rule, this is with verdict, with fatwa, haram with fatwa, not obligatory, not recommended, alright? And the same, it is haram rule applies to the small musical instruments made as toys for the children. The same tools for children is haram to sell or purchase them. However, there is no harm in selling and purchasing instruments of common use. Common use like what? Like radio and tape recorder. Radio and tape recorder, it has two types of use, haram and halal. Televisions and so on, it has two types of use. It is halal to purchase them and sell them, provided that it is not intended to use it for haram purposes. There is no intention to use it for haram intention. Even if I leave it at home and I don't know what my wife or my kids, they do with them, maybe they use it for halal or haram, yes, it doesn't matter here. But if you know they are going to use it for haram purpose, it is haram for you to buy it. Is this understood, inshallah? Okay. For example, yes, issue number 2078. If a thing which can be used for halal purpose is sold with the intention of putting it to haram use, he used it, it is used for halal purpose, but the intention of selling it with the purpose of haram, of using haram, with the intention of putting it to haram use. For example, if grapes are sold so that wine may be prepared with them, the transaction is haram. The transaction is haram. Belong to whom? Belong to the seller. I'm not talking about the buyer. Belong to the seller. I sell it, and my intention, look, my intention as a seller, maybe this person is going to make it what? Is going to make it wine. This is haram transaction. And as a precaution, the deal is void. And as a precaution, the transaction is void. However, if the seller does not sell, if the seller does not sell it with that niyyah, what niyyah? I sell it for not making what? For not making haram use. Not with the intention of haram use, but only knows that the buyer will prepare wine with the grapes. The transaction will be in order. Now, somebody came and buy grapes from me. All right? Then, and I know that the buyer is going to make wine from the juice of that grape. But my intention is not to sell it for what? For making wine. Now it is halal and the commodity is valid. The commodity is valid. So it is with the intention of the buyer himself. The buyer himself. Issue number 2079. Making a human sculpture. You know what's the meaning of sculpture? A human sculpture? هيكل العظم. Or that of an animal, أو هيكل عظمي للحيوان, عز الله السامع, is haram. But there is no harm in purchasing and selling it. Making the sculpture of human beings or animals, it is haram. But it is haram to sell it or to purchase it? No, it is no haram. Though, as a precaution, it should be avoided. This deal should be avoided as a precaution. However, painting a human painting human portraits or animals is permissible. Painting human portraits or animal portraits is what is permissible. It is not haram. Issue number 2080. It is haram to purchase a thing which has been acquired by means of gambling. It is haram to purchase a thing which, to purchase, you know what was the meaning of purchase? Tishtari. To tishtari. It is haram to purchase a thing which has been acquired by means of gambling, theft, or avoid transaction, and if a person buys such a thing from a seller, he should return it to its original owner. If you purchase, for example, a stolen bicycle, a stolen mobile phone, you should, and you know it has been stolen, and you know the owner, you should give it back to the owner and go after the thief and take your money. It is not allowed for you to give it back to the thief and ask for your money. No. It does not belong to the thief. It is belong to its original owner. And at the same time, you should go after the thief and ask him for your money. Issue number 2081. If a person sells ghee, دهن, mixed with fat, ممزوج بمن ويا الشحم, and specifies it, this is ghee and this is fat. For example, he says, I'm selling 3 kilos of ghee. The transaction will be, the transaction will be void if the quantity of fat is more to the extent that it cannot be called ghee. Yeah, as I told you, he mixed ghee with fat. And he said, this is what? This is ghee. I'm selling 3 kilos of ghee. But in fact, half of it, 1.5 kilos, it is fat. Now, this transaction is void. Because the custom is not, the urf is not accepting this. Is not saying this is only ghee, but it is ghee mixed with fat 50-50. So this transaction will be what? Will be void. Yes.
Sorry, Sheikhna. If the price for two kinds is same to same.
Like what?
The fat and
the fat and the ghee?
Yes.
Alaykum salam, Sheikh.
Same to same. This price for
as
them.
I said.
Yes.
I said 1.5 kilos ghee and 1.5 kilos what fat. So. This is not accepted. And I told you this is ghee, 3 kilos of ghee. But in fact, in reality, it is what? It is 50-50, ghee and fat. This is not accepted, and the transaction is void.
So we talking about the kind for it.
What do you mean by kind?
No.
Huh?
Yes.
No.
I meaning that.
Yes.
The kind.
Yes,
The currency
yes,
or the price?
the type.
Or the type?
Yes, the type.
The type
of,
or the price?
yes. I have to know what is it. I have to know what is it. Look. If a person sells G mixed with fat and specifies it, for example, he says, I am selling 3 kilos of G, the transaction will be void if the quantity of fat is more to the extent that it cannot be called G, that the fat is more than G. But if the quantity of fat is small, so that it can just be classified as G mixed with fat, the transaction will be valid. Who is saying this is G and who is saying this is fat, or who is saying this is fat mixed with G? It is the urf, the people, the specialists. The specialist people, they will say so. According to their hukum, according to their judgment, we can say this transaction is valid or void. But if the quantity of fat is small, so that it can just be classified as G mixed with fat, the transaction will be valid. But the buyer has a right to refusal. The buyer has the right of what? Of refusal. The buyer has the right of refusal to reject the transaction. I need only G. I don't need any fat mixed with it. And I pay money for G. And you said that you mix it with what? With fat. It is not allowed. Based on the deficiency in the quality, and can therefore cancel the deal and ask for a refund. Leave this and ask for a refund. And if G and fat are distinct from each other, that means we can distinguish between them, the deal covering the fat will be void. The deal, that means this is G and beside it what? Fat. And there is what? There is a separation between them. Alright, if we can separate it, the money for or the price for G will be accepted, and the money for the fat or the deal with the fat will be refused. The deal covering the fat will be void, and the seller will have to refund the price of that fat and keep the fat for himself. Is this understood? The last part. But in the case also the buyer has a right to cancelling the transaction. Also the buyer can have the transaction of a pure G which is in it. And also the buyer has what? Has the right to cancel also the pure G, the transaction of pure G, where the seller does not say that he is selling a particular thing and just sells, say, 3 kilos of G he possesses. And if it turns out to be G mixed with fat, the buyer can return it and ask for a pure G. The same thing if he said only I buy G, 3 kilos of G, and it is very clear that it is G mixed with fat, he has the right of what? To cancel the whole transaction. But if there is a possibility to distinguish the fat and the G, the money which covers the G, it is valid, while the price which covered the fat is invalid, he can take the G and take the money for the fat. That's number one. Number two, and also he has the right to cancel the whole transaction. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن عدوهم.